So the New York Mets open the series with the Miami Marlins with a resounding victory. They defeat Miami by a final score of 2-0. They get their fifth straight consecutive win as they continue rolling on this opening homestand here at Citi Field. Guys, what's up? Tony Metro here. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and give this video a like. Love doing all these pre-game, pre-series, and post-game and post-series videos. So that's my whole plan here. I'm glad you guys are tuning in, and hopefully I might have met you over at Citi Field this past weekend for opening weekend. It was amazing, and the good times keep on rolling as the Mets get their fifth straight victory of 2025 here, and they move up to 7-3 on the season. So let's get into it. It has been a really fun homestand, like I said. Kodai Senga going out on the bump, and he delivers for the Mets. He goes 5 innings, gives up no runs, just a couple of hits scattered across that entire outing, and then just a few walks as well. Really enjoyed this one. I mean, I said earlier in my pregame chat, hey, I'd like to see the Mets hit and get maybe 6, 5, 7 runs somewhere in that area and, kind of balance out the team, because so far here early in the going for the team, it's been the pitching, it's been the starting rotation, it's been the bullpen that has carried this team, but the offense, they have not carried their weight. So unfortunately, that was kind of the same tonight, as the Mets are barely able to squeak out 2 runs. One of them be of Juan Soto's RBI double, and then another one later in the 8th inning from Tyrone Taylor on a base hit up the middle. But happy to see a nice outing from Kodai Senga, who I think is pivotal to this rotation. And I think most Mets fans would agree. They need to see something out of Senga. Make sure he's healthy for the long term, considering he really didn't pitch at all in the regular season in 2023. So taking a look at Senga's numbers for the night, he ends up going 5 innings pitched. He gives up near 0 runs, just a couple hits scattered over the evening. And if MLB.com would cooperate, that would be excellent. I would really appreciate that. And here it is. 5 hits, no earned runs, just 2 walks, and he strikes out 4. And so what I said earlier in my stream, pregame stream that is, of this series, I was wondering how the Marlins would adjust to Senga and the Ghost Forkball, because last start, his only start of the year, of course, against Miami just a couple days ago, he was really devastating with the Ghost Forkball. He had 6 strikeouts of his 8 come via the Ghost Fork. And I was wondering, would the Marlins be able to adapt to that? Would they lay off of it? And they clearly did. But the adapt is what Senga did. He ended up throwing more fastballs, and he was able to fool the Marlins regardless. So really veteran presence on the mound, and really impressive from Hayden Sanger, who's behind the plate for his 3rd straight game. I'm thinking that Kodai, that is, was probably calling most of his pitches this evening, but really happy to see that they were able to be on the same tune, and there were no issues there. So fantastic start from Kodai Senga tonight as he gets his first win of 2025. Again, that's 5 innings pitched, scatters 5 hits, and then just 2 walks, and also strikes out 4. And the real story of this all was that the Mets bullpen continues to be amazing. Danny Young coming in relief of Senga for the 6th inning. I was thinking, hey, maybe Mendoza's going to let Senga go for a 6th inning. He ended up not doing that. It went to Danny Young. I was very worried. I'm going to be completely honest with you, especially after the last 2 outings that we have seen from Danny Young. But overall, Young looked pretty good this afternoon. He went 1 inning, gave up just a hit. He struck out a batter to finish the 6th inning, and there was no harm, no foul. And then we had to decide, all right, where do we go from here? 7th inning, still a 1-0 game. The Mets are not hitting very much so far in the early going. What are they going to do? They go to Jose Butto, apparently, as Gary Cohen made very clear this evening on the broadcast. It is not Budo, it is Butto. So, Jose Butto, who I have told you guys many times if you watch my streams, I believe is going to be one of the top relievers in all of Major League Baseball. at the end of 2025. He continued to add on to his resume this evening. He goes 2 scoreless innings, just 1 hit, a walk, but 2 strikeouts. He lowers his season ERA to 1.23 on the year for 2025. No issues. A couple guys on base, a little bit of traffic on the base pass, but Buto with another solid outing to get us to the bottom of the 8th. And that's where Tyrone Taylor came up to the plate and would deliver a insurance run for the Mets to make it 2-0. And the Mets would then hand the ball to Ryan Stanek, who had not pitched since that finale against Miami, where he gave up an inherited run via AJ Minter, and the Mets end up closing this one out, winning 2-0 for their 5th consecutive win, and the Mets all of a sudden are rolling 7-3 on the year, and the good times are rolling in Queens. I'm very happy about it. There's a lot of things I could take away from these last couple of games. The biggest thing for me is the pitching. Obviously, everybody knows how good the pitching has been so far for the Mets, both the rotation and the bullpen. The rotation, if you want to have any type of qualms or issues with it, they're not giving us a lot of length. Kodai Senga went 5 innings today, but again, that was pretty close to what we expected, given that we believe he's still on this 75 pitch count limit. Then they ended up handing it off to the bullpen, and they do what they have done the entire year, which is just dominate and not give up runs, not give in. It has been so crazy to have a Mets bullpen that doesn't give up runs. I'm not used to that. That's not something that I've ever seen in my Mets fandom over the last 30 years. I mean, even in 2006, when you believed that it was going to be Duaner Sanchez handing the ball off to Billy Wagner, and then in 2009 with JJ Putz handing it off to K-Rod and Francisco Rodriguez, it just never ended up working out. But right now, it looks really, really good. Now, are the Mets bullpen going to be perfect every single game? Absolutely not. Nobody's perfect except for me, obviously. But I do believe that the Mets bullpen is going to wilt a little bit, obviously, especially given how much they have worked early in this season. That being said, though, I do think that if the Mets starting rotation could go a little bit longer in their starts, it will take a little bit of the tax on the bullpen and make them a little bit less used, and hopefully everything will even out. But my other big take from this opening game with the Marlins is that the Mets lineup continues to struggle. We got to see Juan Soto with the opposite field double to give the Mets the lead in the 3rd inning. That was fantastic. Juan Soto, for everything that people are saying online, he's not worth $765 million and this and that, and the Mets overpaid. Okay, fair enough. Maybe they did. I don't know. But he's still having Juan Soto-like numbers. He's getting on base. He's getting base knocks. Maybe he doesn't have all those cheap home runs that he would typically hit at Yankee Stadium last year. But Soto has still had a really quietly solid start to his Mets tenure. And it was great to see him use the opposite field tonight, go to left center, and drive in Lindor with that go-ahead run in the 3rd inning. And then Tyrone Taylor in the 8th inning with 1 out, hitting one back up the middle, the first RBI of 2025 for Tyrone Taylor. He hasn't had a start this year, so great to see Taylor getting in on the action. Overall, though, still, the lineup has not been great. Outside of Pete Alonso, it has not been a fantastic start for the Mets bats. Let's take a look at the box score for the Mets hitters this evening. I'm just always hoping that MLB.com will make things easy for me, but for some reason they don't. So we're going to pull this up right here. By the way, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Also, be sure to like this video. We do pre-game streams, pre-series streams, post-game, post-series streams, and I always like to get a little creative and do things and just talk about Major League Baseball and the Mets in general with totally revamped streams or revamped videos. So you guys definitely should check it out. So appreciate it very much. Hopefully I met you over the weekend at Citi Field, at Mets Willets Point, or on the 7 line. As you can hear, my boy Mookie speaking over here. Hopefully he'll quiet down for us. So let me pull up the Mets box score here for the lineup. It was not a pretty one. Again, the Mets not scoring a ton of runs and have completely been carried by the pitching staff, which, hey, I'm happy about. But, eventually the Mets need to start hitting the way we expected them to when we entered this year. So Lindor went 3 for 4. That was great. Lindor leads off the game with the base hit. He gets 2 more, 3 for 4. And, scores a run on the Juan Soto double. That was great. So Lindor looks like he's coming around. He brings his season average up to 242. So that was fantastic to see. Juan Soto with 2 hits on this afternoon. He brings in the first Mets run, which I guess you could call the game-winning run of the evening. He ends up bringing his average up to 286. His OPS is now at 905 for the year. So doing exactly what we expected him to do, maybe just in a different fashion. I don't know if Mets fans realize how much Juan Soto walks and how much that pumps up his OPS. Look, Billy Beane said it in Moneyball, a walk is as good as a base hit. So just be patient, Mets fans. It was frigid at Citi Field this year. That's why they changed the game time for tomorrow, and it was mentioned ad nauseum on the broadcast. So let's all just be very patient. Juan Soto is doing just fine in the early goings of his Mets tenure. Meanwhile, Pete Alonso ends up going 2 for 4. He's hitting 314 on the year. And you know what I loved about Pete this afternoon? In the first inning, his base hit up the middle, just a line drive, kind of inside out at it, brought it up the middle for a knock. You just didn't see that from Pete last year, and really not even 23 or even in 22, which was one of his better seasons with the Mets and in his career. He's not trying to force anything. He's taking what the pitchers are giving him, and it's working out really well so far. He has 2 base hits on the day to go 2 for 4. He brings his season average up to 314, and that OPS for the year of 2025 at 1086. So things are going very well for Pete Alonso. Brandon Nimmo with an 0 for today. He goes 0 for 4, 211. It was really solid those first 2 series against Houston and then against Miami. He had 2 homers in Miami at South Beach. So far, since Toronto came to town and now here, the first game with the Marlins, things have not been going so well for Nimmo, but I'm not panicking about him. We know Brandon Nimmo, he will have his moments. Mark Vientos. Let's talk about Mark Vientos. He goes 0 for 1, and you're thinking, well, how's that possible? Everyone else had 4 or 5 at-bats this afternoon. Mark Vientos does not get a hit in his lone at-bat, but he draws 3 walks. This was, I think, one of the biggest evenings for Mark Vientos. He gets those 3 walks. He showed a lot of patience tonight against the Miami Marlins pitching staff. I was not super concerned about him the first couple of games through the year where he was striking out a lot, where he wasn't getting on base. He had some hard hit balls, but he was not fruitful in any of it. And I kept saying, just wait on him. But I will be honest with you, a couple of games into that series with the Blue Jays, I started to get worried, especially after he threw his helmet down. That one was in Miami, but then he didn't have a lot of base hits against the Jays. And I was getting a little concerned about him, but this was excellent. A couple of really good at plate appearances where he showed excellent discipline. 3 walks for Vientos. I think this could be a total moving point for Vientos. We'll see how he builds on it from here. Jose Siri pinch hit. He did not get a base hit, but was able to score a run on a walk. Brad Beatty played for defensive positioning, replacing Vientos for the 9th inning. He did not have any plate appearances. But Tyrone Taylor, 2 hits tonight. Love to see that. Got the RBI in the 8th inning, like I said. Luis Angel Acuna 0 for 3, and then Hayden Sanger 0 for 4, which is kind of to be expected. So not a fantastic evening for the Mets on the offensive side of things. They end up with 9 hits. They scored 2 runs, couple walks, so not terrible. Well, again, it's a guy that, we really didn't expect a whole lot out of as far as who was starting on the mound for the Marlins. It was Belotso. He ends up going 3.2 innings, 5 hits, 2 walks and 1 earned run. He strikes out 2 Mets. And, this was a to be determined pitcher. We didn't know who was going to be starting this game for the Marlins until maybe an hour and a half before 7:10. So this was a game where, again, the Mets had every opportunity. You have this lineup on paper that's supposed to score a lot of runs, and it's against a pitcher that's not really of high value or a guy that has prospect pedigree, and the Mets just can't seem to come through. I will say this. It's freezing cold outside of New York, okay? I was at the game at Citi Field on Saturday, and it was horrible. We were inside the Heineken Club, I would say 70% of the time. I kind of ventured out, take a look, and, try to be out there, but I was with friends and family, and I didn't want to force them to be out there, even though they know I am a lunatic Mets fan, but I was watching on the TV from in there. It's very cold in New York. Nobody likes to swing a bat when you're that cold. And if you've ever played baseball, if you've ever been in the cold, playing sports is not super fun to do in the cold. So I will give them that excuse, but eventually this Mets lineup does need to start hitting. It feels very similar to the last couple of years, and I really do truly believe part of it is the weather and the conditions of New York. The only thing that gives me hesitation about that, they began the first 2 series on the road, both in dome stadiums in Houston and in Miami, and things kind of looked similar. So it's not uncommon for teams to have slow starts. Hitters are usually behind pitchers. So I'll be very interested to see, how do the Mets lineup come around and hit against opponents? And then how do opponents hit against the Mets starters and their bullpen given their great start to 2025? But the main headline, the Mets are streaking. They are 7-3. We are super happy about that. Fantastic outing from Kodai Senga. We got a great 2 innings out of Jose Butto, as Gary Cohen said tonight. And then we get the save from Ryan Stanek. So great to see all of that. Stanek coming in, giving us 3 outs in the 9th inning with Edwin Diaz likely unavailable. Let me know. What do you guys think? How happy are you with how the Mets have looked over the last couple games? Put the wins aside, put the loss and rest in the whole record to the side, but how do you feel about them right now, looking at the outlook of the entire 2025 season? Obviously, 7-3, solid start. We're now half a game back of the Philadelphia Phillies for first place in the National League East, but long-term outlook, there's definitely a lot of things that this team has to still prove. It is a long season. In the words of Aaron Boone, a long-ass season. So lots still to happen, but would love to hear from you guys as we continue on. I'm going to make this a little bit of a longer stream here as I try to get here on Twitter so that everybody can join in, but I would love to hear. Let me know in the comment section and we'll continue this chat. But really great afternoon for the Mets as they continue to make things happen here, even without getting a whole lot of hits, which is so crazy to me. Putting this on Twitter, and now I'm checking our chat. What do we got? Jesus Rosario, great content. Let's effing go Mets. Bullpen on fire. You're 100% right. Jesus, this has been awesome. LFGM. The Mets keep it going, right? And this bullpen keeps it going. I mean, I'm not going to lie, man. I got a little scared when Danny Young came into this game. I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. This is not going to be good. And then he ends up getting out of that inning. He gets a ground ball for a double play. They don't end up turning it, but then he does strike out the final batter of the 6th inning, and all was good. But Jose Butto, every time he comes in, I'm telling you, this guy is going to be amazing. All right, I'm telling you, by the end of this year, Jose Butto is going to be one of the top relievers in all of baseball. Everyone across the MLB will know his name and think of him as one of the top relievers. He's just been so great, and his flexibility is what really is so cool to me. He can pitch in the 5th, the 6th. He can pitch in the 9th and close. He can do 2 innings. He can do 1 inning. I mean, he's just so flexible, and that's something you don't really see out of a lot of MLB relievers these days. So really excited about Butto, yeah. And hoping that we continue to get good results out of him. But the lineups definitely left a lot to be desired. I was happy to see Juan Soto go opposite field to left center for a double today. And, a lot of people are kind of bagging on Soto, mostly non-Mets fans. I don't think any real Mets fans are giving him a hard time based on his first 8, now 9 games with the Mets. But it's definitely been a little slow if you're just looking at the box score. Okay, I agree with that. Just one home run, that one coming in the second game of the season in Houston. We would hope for a little bit more at this point. But he's getting on base. He's getting walks. He's punched a couple base hits here and there. That's what you want, okay? Have we all forgotten about what it used to be an MLB player, to be Major League Baseball fans? It used to be, what's your average? What's your slugging? And now we're all concerned about, hey, how many home runs does he have 5 games into the year? So far, I think so okay with Soto. Not bad, not amazing. Just give him a little bit more time. And the good news is the Mets are winning, and that is masking any of those types of issues. Because one of the biggest things I was concerned about when the Mets did sign Soto this offseason to that groundbreaking contract was he gets off to a bad start and the Mets are not winning. Not only are all of the other fans going to be really crucial and critical against the Mets, but so are Mets fans. It's very reminiscent of how the Carlos Beltran era began in 2005. So hopefully everybody's keeping calm and keeping some presence about, hey, things are okay. Juan Soto is doing just fine. So let's take a look at tomorrow's pitching matchup for Game 2 of the series. The Mets will look to win their 3rd consecutive series. Of course, they won 2 out of 3 at Lone Depot Park against Miami. They then swept the Jays over this weekend in the home opener series at Citi Field, and now win Game 1 against the Marlins. But for Game 2, we have a rematch of last Thursday's rubber match, Clay Holmes versus Connor Gillespie, which the Mets just barely squeaked out and won. It was such an ugly ball game, and I'm telling you, my heart rate was up to 500 watching that one, and I'm really hoping one way or the other that that is not the case tomorrow. And as if you know, and you were watching the stream, or rather the game broadcast tonight, it has been moved to 4:10 p.m. So the game is not at 7:10 p.m. anymore. It will now be started at 4:10 at Citi Field. So we will do a pregame stream here on my channel at about 4 o'clock, maybe about 25 minutes earlier than that, somewhere in that vicinity, talking about this game. And hopefully another Mets win after the finale of that one. But let's take a look at the pitching matchup. Clay Holmes taking on Connor Gillespie. Like I said, rematch of last Wednesday's rubber game against the Marlins at Lone Depot Park. Clay Holmes ended up going 4.2 innings. He gave up 2 runs, just one of them earned. That was again when Mark Vientos had his issues in the field, throwing the ball over Hayden Singer's head at home plate. That allowed an unearned run to score. Holmes also gave up 6 hits, 2 walks, but did strike out 6 batters. For the year, though, over 2 starts, I'm telling you, I think Holmes has looked pretty good. He's ran into some bad luck, especially defensively. He's given up 5 runs total, only 3 of them earned. That one unearned run against the Marlins when Vientos threw the ball over Sanger's head, and then another unearned run in his opening day start against the Astros when Luis Angel Acuna had an errant throw on what should have been an inning-ending double play. So really, I think the stuff has looked good for Clay Holmes. You know, the sinker, it hasn't been there like we were imagining it would. He used it a lot more in that opener against Houston, not so much against Miami in that rubber game. But I'm thinking that now, hopefully he's home and they've had a couple extra days rest. Maybe Clay Holmes can finally start to get comfortable. But even though most people might be expecting 5, 6, 7 innings of shutout ball, considering his Grapefruit League numbers in spring training, I've been really happy with Clay Holmes. And I'll take those numbers any day of the week. 4.2 innings pitched in both of his first 2 starts. 2 earned runs in the second one, 1 earned run in the first. It's been a really solid start to Clay Holmes, despite what the box score might tell you. And he will be taking on Connor Gillespie, who I said before the Mets game against the Marlins, Game 3 in that rubber match, it was right after the Mets just lost and got kind of dominated by Sandy Alcantara. The Mets better beat up on this guy. He is a no-name prospect. Nobody has ever heard of him. He's 27 years old. He had only made 4 career starts before last Thursday against the Mets. And of course, Gillespie goes out and has a fantastic outing against the Mets, because that's always how it goes, especially Marlin. He goes 5 innings pitched, gives up just 1 run on 4 hits, strikes out 6, and he did not issue any walks. In fact, he was loading the strike zone. 51 of his 73 pitches were in the zone for strikes, and the Mets really stood no chance. They were fortunate to come back and win that game. They got some great relief pitching, despite some errors in the field and some clutch hitting. But overall, it was a solid win. The Mets definitely will need to perform better, especially the batters in their lineup. So we'll see how it all goes. Hopefully that continues and they can come around this time. Second time seeing him in less than 1 week. We'll see. Gillespie has really not been an all too impressive guy throughout his career. Again, like I said, just 5 starts here throughout his career. He came out with Cleveland. That's where he made his first 3 starts. He made a start against Pittsburgh in the opening series of the season for the Marlins, and then that one against the Mets last week. So this will be only his 6th career start. So hopefully the Mets bats can heat up. We know the weather's not going to heat up because they moved the game time. So I don't know if it's a weather condition kind of thing. I don't know if that everyone's just still a little bit behind from the pitchers, which is very common for this time of year in Major League Baseball. But a good win tonight for the Mets as they move to 7-3 on the year. They're now half a game out of the NL East, in first place behind just the Philadelphia Phillies. And things are rolling in Queens. So guys, like I said, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Give this stream a like, and we can continue the chat moving on. We'll be doing a pregame stream tomorrow for Game 2 of the Mets and Marlins series. Again, that game has been moved to 4:10 p.m. Eastern time, so we will have a live stream previewing that at about 3:15 p.m. Eastern time as the Mets look to get their 3rd straight series, 2nd straight at home at Citi Field, and hopefully we'll see you there. That's it for now. Let's go Mets.